Hi, welcome to the Hawaii Real Estate Report. I'm Scott Sakata.
I'm Jeff Orig.
Today our guest is Abe Lee, broker and owner of Abe Lee Realty. Aside from his brokerage company, Abe also runs Abe Lee Development, which specializes in small property development. We will discuss some of the basics that you should look out for when developing small properties and some of the truths and myths that we often hear about.
Sure. Abe, before we begin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I came from Korea when I was 8. I went to the normal public school at Lunalilo Elementary School. Went to University High School, University of Hawaii, got a bachelor's degree in Asian Studies, what I call a good-for-nothing degree, and then a master's degree in education from the University of Utah. But in between, I have had a license since 1973, real estate license, and I really enjoy real estate. So basically, I've had my license, I guess, since 1974, so 34 years.
Wow.
And I've developed real estate, small real estate projects. I've taught education classes on how to develop real estate, probably for about 20-something years. And I teach pre-licensing schools, and I also teach continuing education classes.
You're a busy guy. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so regarding small property development in Hawaii, usually the first question people ask is, how many homes can I have on my property? Can you start to discuss that and explain?
Sure. There's different zoning classifications on the city and county, in the city and county of Honolulu, which is the whole island of Oahu. Every island is different. So what I'm going to talk about is specifically for Oahu. Okay. I've developed on neighbor islands, but they have different terminologies, same basic concepts. And the concept is, what can I do with my property, and how much land do I need to do what I want to do? Example, let's say in residential zone property, there's several classifications on Oahu. One is called R3.5, which means it's residential, and the minimum lot size is 3,500 square feet. Then there's R5, 5,000 square feet, R7.5, 7,500 square feet, R10, which is 10,000, and R20, which is 20,000 square feet. So those are your basic categories for residential zone properties. Now there's other zonings like country zone, which is 1 acre minimum lot size. Then you got agricultural, and there's 2 zoning classifications. One's called A2, Ag 2, which is 2 acres per house, and there's Ag 1, which is 5 acres per house. So it gets pretty complicated. So I think maybe we'll focus just on residential.
Yeah. Okay.
My favorite properties to look for, because we do buy and sell real estate and we develop real estate for our clients, is that I like residential zone property, usually R5 or 7.5, and that means that an R5 zone property, you need to have a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet. But if you want, but if you want to build a duplex, then you need a minimum of 7,500 square feet. Then if you want to build 2 homes detached, then you need 10,000 square feet. And this is just basic zoning information. Mm-hmm. Now, most consumers don't know that. They just look at a lot and go, oh, big lot. But I ask them, how big is the lot? Oh, I don't know. Well, I need to know the square footage. Mm-hmm. That's really important. And I need to know the zoning. Is it residential? Is it apartment? Is it industrial mixed or business? So those things are really important.
So like 10,000, like someone would say, well, I saw this big lot. It's 16,000 square feet. But then I guess your next question would be,
what's the zoning?
Yeah. So if there's only, let me see, it's R10, and it's 15,000 square feet.
Can't do anything except build 1 house.
Even if I have size, even if there's land size to build 2.
Correct. And I'll have realtors and homeowners call me and say, I got a big backyard. I go, okay, but what's the zoning? Mm-hmm. And they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the zoning is crucial to seeing what can you do with that property.
Okay. And let's say you do have the correct zoning, and you're able to build an extra house.
Right.
What's like utilities?
Yes. What we usually do is whenever we're given a property to consult or we're going to buy a property, we always check on infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so usually when I teach classes, I say, okay, I got 10,000 square feet R5 zone land, and can I build 1 house? And most students will go, yes. Then I'll say, can I build 2 houses? Because they know it's double the minimum land area, and it's R5, so they'll go, yes, you can. I said, no, it depends. Mm-hmm. It depends on water availability, if there's enough water pressure. Second, it depends on sewer capacity, because some parts of town, you cannot build a second house, even though you got hundreds of acres. And then the third is, do you have adequate fire protection? Is there a fire hydrant nearby? And the fire hydrant cannot be further than 150 feet to the farthest point of the house, from the fire hydrant to the house. And so these little things, who would know that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll continue after this short commercial break.
You're watching the Hawaii Real Estate Report. This week our guest is Abe Lee of Abe Lee Realty, and we're discussing small property development. Abe, can you discuss about the other types of residential zoning, R7.5?
Well, we talked about R5 just a few minutes ago, where you need to have so many square feet to build a duplex or two families, two detached homes. In R7.5 zone land, the square footages differ, and it's 14,000 square feet minimum to build a duplex, which is really, quite a large number of square feet. And then if you want to build two detached homes, then you need 15,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. So in R5, we needed 7,500 square feet to do a duplex, but in R7.5, we need 14,000 square feet, right, which is a really big difference.
Right.
And then to build two homes detached, in R5, you need 10,000, and in R7.5, you need 15,000. So if you don't have those square footages, you can't build a second house.
And it doesn't seem to make mathematical sense.
It doesn't. And I believe that the bigger the lot, the tougher they're going to make it to have a duplex.
I see.
And that's why you got 14,000, which is quite a bit, larger than, percentage-wise,
right,
than the 5,000 to 7,500.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you able to build, what about the larger zone, the zonings of R10, right, R20?
Well, in R10 and R20, the land use ordinance, which is the zoning Bible of Honolulu, says that you cannot do a duplex in R10 and R20. And I'm going, why not? Well, I don't know why not.
It just says you can't.
Yeah. So people ask me why. I go, hey, just the book says so. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But in R10, you can only build two homes, but no duplex. They have to be detached. But then you need double the minimum land area, which is 20,000 square feet in R10. And R20, you need 40,000 square feet. So the bigger the zoning lot, the tougher it is to get homes that are close to each other like a duplex.
Yeah. And let's say going back to the R5, 5,000 square feet, you mentioned minimum lot sizes, but what happens if in an R5 zoned area someone only has 4,000 square feet? Okay. Is there any advantages, disadvantages on that? Or? Well,
what happened to those lots is what we call remnant pieces. And sometime 50, 60, 70 years ago, what happened was they developed the properties, and there was a little piece that was left over. And the developers didn't know what to do with it, so they divided to a small lot. Those are what we call substandard lots. And we have lots of in Manoa, in fact. My neighbor had a lot like that, where it was R7.5 zone land, and my lot was 14,000 square feet. But the lot next door was only 3,500 square feet.
3,500.
Yeah. The minimum lot size are 7.5. Okay. Wow. So it's a 7,500 square foot lot. It was a remnant piece. Mm-hmm. And if that house burns down, some people think because it's substandard lot, they can't rebuild. And the truth is, the city must allow you to rebuild on any given lot as long as it is a legal lot of record. So even though it's substandard, they have to let you build. I have a funny story. This lady came to me on an open house one day, and she goes, oh, my lot is really small. This is in Manoa. And I said, what's your zoning? She goes, she don't know. But in my neighborhood, so I figured it's 7.5 like mine. And she said, my house is so small. My lot is small and I have a house. And every night I pray that it doesn't burn. I said, why? Because she said, my realtor told me that I cannot rebuild. I said, that's not true. You can rebuild. So I told her, go pray for something else, but not for a fire. So I gave her the number of the Department Land Use, DLU back then, Department of Land Utilization. I said, here's the number, call them up, and let me know if I'm not telling the truth. She never called me back. So I imagine she prayed for other things, but not for no fire. And so we get different information or misinformation from people,
right,
and they mean well, but it's wrong.
Mm-hmm. So if it does burn down and you have the substandard lot, you would have to build according to the current code.
Right.
So your footprint might be smaller.
Correct. You can they allow you 50% lot coverage on the building. Oh. So if you have a 7,000 square foot lot, you can build a 3,500 square foot home under the roof, first floor. Then you can go 2 stories, and you can actually double it, as long as you have the right setbacks. So setbacks govern what you can or cannot build, as well as a 50% lot coverage.
I guess that's better than nothing then.
Oh yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
So there's tiny little lots like 1,500 or 2,000 square foot lots in Liliha, Palama, Kalihi. You can build a house. It's just going to be really skinny.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And parking underneath and second floor living. Small house, but at least you can use the lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll be back after these messages and keep discussing.
Hi, we're back. We're talking small property development with Abe Lee. One question we hear a lot here in Honolulu when people talk about doing extensions or homes, rebuilding homes, is the word grandfathered. People say, well, this home's been grandfathered. Can you kind of explain a little bit about that?
Sure. It's called grandfather or legal non-conforming properties. And let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say you have a 6,000 square foot lot in R5 zone. You only allowed one house. But 50 years ago, 60 years ago, they didn't have any of those zoning rules. So grandma, grandpa built one house, built another house. Or sometimes they moved houses onto the property. And so they have two homes. That's legal non-conforming because you can only have one house. So if one of them burns down, you can't rebuild it.
Because of the zoning and the square footage.
Correct. So the zoning is R5. The minimum lot size for a duplex is 7,500 square feet. You only have 6,000. That's called legal non-conforming.
Okay.
Now, the other problem that we see is we run into a property maybe 15,000 square feet, and they have 7 homes on the property, and it's R5 zone.
I see quite a few of those.
Yes. Well, that's really legal non-conforming, because if any of them burn down, only 2 homes can be rebuilt, because the zoning code says you can build one house, no problem. You can build a second house if you have infrastructure and if you have double the minimum land area or you got the duplex lot size. But the third house, the city and county says, you have to subdivide or do some sort of development process. Well, these homes are grandfathered. They were done before the building code or zoning code went into effect. So if you have 7 homes on 15,000 square feet, they were built according to code at the time of construction, but now they're not to current code. So the legal nonconformity would not allow any of those homes to be rebuilt except 2. So if all of them got destroyed, only 2 could be rebuilt.
Are there any protections that someone with the 7 homes could use?
Yeah, they'd pray a lot.
Okay.
But what if there was, for example, 7 homes on the lot and it did have the square footage allowed?
Then what the city does, instead of going to 5,000 square feet on R5 zone land, they give us a break. They use 3,750 square feet to divide into the land area. So on this 15,000 square feet, if you divide it by 3,750, you're allowed 4 homes.
Okay.
So you multiply the 3,750 by 7, and let's say it's 4,000 just for mathematical purposes, then you get 28,000 square feet of land. 7 homes can be rebuilt, but you have to get a special permit called an existing use permit. And the existing use permit says that if you could prove that they were built according to code at the time of construction, and there's no current building code violations, then you can get an existing use permit, and you can stop praying at night. Because if they burn down or destroyed by fire or earthquakes, then you can rebuild all 7 homes. But you have to have the density, which is the land area. You need 28,000 or 3,750 times 7. That's your minimum. And then you have to prove that there's no building code violations. Well, some people, they cockroach an extra kitchen in here, or they build an addition without permits. So in order to get the existing use permit approved, they have to comply with all the codes. And we do this as a specialty. In fact, I love existing use permits. So if any of you have multiple homes on one lot, call me, because I can tell you what can be done with the property.
Well, you just mentioned proving the homes are built to code. Let's say grandma and grandpa built the home 50, 60 years ago. Do records go back that far? And if they don't, what can you do?
Well, they do show whether the homes were there or not. And usually there's tax records because they're billing you for X number of homes.
Okay.
Oh.
And sometimes there are permits.
Yeah.
We had one where there's 9 homes on one lot on 12 acres of land in town, and the city records only showed 5 homes.
Okay.
But there are physically 9 homes. So we went to the city and said, there are 9 homes, here's the pictures. And we asked the deputy director at the time, what do we do to get it approved? She said, have the oldest living people there sign an affidavit, a notarized affidavit saying we've been here for 70 years and all these homes are there.
Truthfully.
So, yeah. So we got the signatures of the people, that 2 or 3 brothers and sisters that grew up on that property for 70 years as tenants. So they went to the city, got it they went to the notary, got it notarized, gave it to the city with the pictures and everything. City recognized 9 homes.
Wow.
So they picked up 4 more houses.
Wow.
Just because of that notarized affidavit. And of course, the homes look old. In fact, they're ready to be torn down. So we proved that they were built, or they were certified that they were there for all those years. And the city said, great, we'll let you have the recognition. So now they can rebuild 9 homes under the existing use permit instead of 5.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue this right after the message.
How does someone get started in developing small properties?
Well, when I learned how to develop small properties, no one taught me because I worked for a big developer and he did high rises. So I learned how to sell, but I didn't know how to develop. So I started off with 6 homes on one lot, an apartment zone on Lunalilo Street between Picoy and Pensacola. That was my very first project. And I learned a lot. So over time, you learn how to do certain things. And we've done probably about 130, 140 projects for our own selves or for our clients. So the first thing we always ask, when someone calls me up, I'll say, what's your lot size and what's the zoning? And then I'll ask, how's the terrain? Is it steep? Because you can have 50,000 square feet of land in R5 zone land, but if it's like Billy Goat Country, you can't do anything with it.
Right.
Maybe one house if you're lucky.
Right.
So those are the real critical issues. Then the second is once they engage us into doing something for them, we have to do the sewer check, make sure there's adequate sewage. And by the way, there's certain parts of town that there's no adequate sewage. Or it's what they call marginally inadequate, and you might have to put in what they call a holding tank. So you flush the stuff into the holding tank, and they pump it out in the morning, 2 to 4 in the morning, and they allow you a building permit to build that second house. First house, they have to give you a permit. Second house, they don't have to. So we check for the water availability, sewer capacity, and fire protection. Now, if the fire department says, or the Board of Water Supply says, the fire pressure or water pressure on this fire hydrant is really low, like say 600 gallons per minute, the standard is 1,000 gallons per minute. The Board of Water Supply has written us once to say, we want 1,000 linear feet with 12-inch water main. And then you can get your permit to build 6 extra houses.
They want you to put that in.
Yes, and on city roads.
Wow.
So we squashed that deal because we couldn't do it. It was too expensive. But usually, the fire department will say, for 2 homes, we'll let you have a sprinkler system in the back house. And that should suffice for fire protection. The holding tank may suffice for the sewer. The water pressure may be a slight problem, because if your house is at the same level as a water tank, there's not enough gravity feed to have water pressure. Then you might have to buy a pump to pressurize your water. So those kinds of things happen once in a great while. So those are the 3 main things that we look for. Of course, access, width of the lot, steepness of the lot, things of that nature as well. And sometimes are there restrictive covenants on that property? Because if you're in a planned community, they might say you can't build another house, like Hawaii Loa, or Mililani Town Association or something like that.
What about, a few years back there was talk about Ohana zoning properties, and there was quite a bit from a certain period of time, and then it got stopped. So how does that get affected?
Well, I need to give you the short version because it takes a long time. But in a snapshot view, when Mayor Eileen Anderson was the mayor, you remember her, and back in the early 80s, she pushed for what they call accessory dwelling units. It was a state law that said every county shall create affordable housing and encourage extended family living. So the law allowed the counties to supersede the zoning. So if we had a 7,000 square foot lot in R5 zone land, you could build 2 detached homes and you didn't have to have 7,500 or 10,000 square feet. So people got all up in arms because, about one side, people got excited thinking they could build 2 homes. The neighborhood board said, we don't like it because you're adding too much density to the neighborhood. So in 1988, the city council passed an ordinance that said Ohana units will now be limited to 800 square feet, 700 square feet, 900 square feet, 1,000 square feet on the second unit if you want the Ohana permit. Well, that kind of squashed the Ohana projects because what can you do with 700 square feet? Then in 1992, they came out and revised the Ohana law to say You have to be related parties. You can't rent to anybody but related parties. The homes have to be attached. You cannot condominiumize and have the same size limit. Then last year, the city passed a law that said we'll lift the size limit on the ohanas. So now there's no size limit, which is great. So you got 3 different dates and 3 different rules.
And if
So
you have
it's
any
very
questions,
complicated.
call
Call me, because I tell you what, even realtors don't know this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand.
Well, I think that's it for this week. I mean, there's a ton of information. I think we're just scratching the surface. And the best bet is to call an expert. And I don't know. That's it for this week. I'm Jeff Orig.
I'm Scott Sakata. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.